Hi, it's Alexis Hasselberger, time management and productivity coach. Do you find yourself just chronically overcommitting? Like you're always in this trap, having overcommitted, and then you think you're out of it and you realize you've committed to something else, and it just feels like you have not enough time to do all of the things that you have already committed to, and you have no idea how you're going to get out of this cycle, right? It just keeps seeming to happen again and again. It's like a vicious cycle. Well, if you have this problem, if you find yourself over optimistically overcommitting to lots of different things only to realize later that you do not have time for all of this stuff, then I want to help you get out of this cycle. And so I'm going to provide you with 4 different ways here today that you can help yourself to get out of this overcommitment trap, this overcommitment cycle that really can just bog you down. Okay. So here's the first one. Change your default from yes. So if you are someone where somebody asks you to do something and you just say yes without thinking about it, I want you to change that default. Now, it doesn't have to be no. I just want you to think about it a little bit. So change that default to let me check, right? If you are thinking about personal stuff, change that default to, thanks so much for thinking of me. Let me check my schedule. If you're saying this for work, you might say, hey, sure, happy to help with that. Let me look at my priorities and get back to you with a timeline, right? So you're giving yourself a little bit of space there to be able to move something out of just that immediate yes, right? That immediate yes that we get stuck with. And then maybe sometimes we resent, right? Now, if you are thinking like, well, what kind of things do I say yes to? You want to think about it from the perspective of what I call the hell yes test, right? So you don't want to say yes to something unless you can answer yes to these 3 questions, right? So if this is something you really want to do, you're really excited about it, or you really just have to do it, is this a hell yes, you really want to do it? You have to do it for some reason, right? Then you can move on to the next question, which is, do I have time for this, right? If you actually have time for this and you really want to do it, go ahead and say yes. And then the last thing is, what if you say no? What if you really want to do it or you really believe you need to do it for some reason and you just don't have time? Then it becomes, would you be willing to push something else out of your schedule to fit that thing in, right? So we want to move from saying yes immediately to really thinking about whether we have the time or we're willing to push some things around to make the time for this new commitment before we commit, right? We don't want to get into that trap of having already said yes by the time we are committing to it. Okay. Now, the next thing that you can do is I find really, really helpful is to time block the thing you're committing to at the time that you're committing to it. So what do I mean by this? I mean that like when you look at your calendar, right, and you look 3 months into the future, there's nothing on it, right? Maybe there's a few meetings here and there. And you think, I'm going to have so much time, right? And so yes, you say yes to things. You look at it, you say yes to things. Now, what if instead, when you committed to something, when you committed to doing the work for something, just as you do when you say commit to going to an event or something, you put that on your calendar. What if you time blocked the work that you were going to do? So for instance, when I am doing a workshop for, maybe I'm developing a brand new workshop for a client and I'm committing to that, we've signed the agreement, we're moving forward. At the time that I do that, I am actually blocking out the time I think it's going to take, plus a little bit more on my calendar for the future, for whenever that's going to happen, so that I don't find myself having overcommitted. And in that way, I'm able to look at my calendar to be able to see kind of what some of those commitments are. Now, am I time blocking every single thing? No. But having time block those big things, it helps me to really see on my calendar what I've already committed to, right? I can put that time in there. So commit at the time, block at the time that you've committed. Now, another thing you could do is related to your calendar too. And this is, if you need to get out of this trap, let's say you're already in it, you've already overcommitted and you're trying to figure out what to do now, protect your calendar. So you can do a calendar audit. That's where we start, where we say, just like, are there any meetings that I can get off my calendar that I don't need to go to or that can be reduced in length or in frequency? I have a lot of content out there about how to do a meeting audit, so I won't dive into it in detail here. But know that the 3 things you want to do are you want to reduce. So where can you reduce in length or frequency? You want to remove. Where can you remove entirely? And then you want to rearrange so that you can get bigger blocks of time in there for the actual work that you're doing. So you want to see if there's anything you can remove off your calendar to make more space for the stuff you've already committed to. And then going forward, if you're one of those people where, your calendar is open and people are just blocking time on it, block time on your calendar that says do not schedule, right? So that other people aren't just randomly taking time from your calendar. They have to actually, contact you and you have to agree that you want this time to be taken from your calendar. So think about how you protect your time on your calendar. And then lastly, You want to create some buffer or some slack in your schedule, right? So one thing that we find is when we start planning, when we start going down this road of being more on top of our tasks and all of this stuff, is that we have a tendency sometimes to want to plan out every minute, of every day. But the reality is that unexpected stuff is going to happen, right? There is going to be stuff that comes up pretty much every single day that you didn't know about yesterday, but you still got to do it today. And so different jobs will have different amounts of this kind of unexpected, unanticipated stuff. But it is actually really expected and anticipated because it always shows up. So if you're not really sure how much buffer you need in your schedule, what you might do is spend, maybe spend a couple of days tracking it, saying, okay, how much time did I spend on stuff that I didn't know about until today that actually was required for me to complete today, right? Maybe it's 25% of your time, maybe it's only half an hour, maybe it's half of your time. No matter what it is, this is important data to have because that is going to help you to protect the time on your schedule to do those things as they come up. And so if you're thinking about this and you're thinking about using this method, you can do a couple of things. So one method is that, let's say 25% of your time is devoted to things that are ad hoc that come up that you just have to deal with in the moment. So you could, when you're planning out your day, you could add 25% time to, everything that you're planning to do. So you're giving yourself kind of a little buffer in between everything that you're doing. Or you could actually block 25% of your day to say, like, I can't schedule things for this time because this time is going to be eaten by the things that I don't know about yet, but I know are going to come. So really be thinking about how much of that unexpected stuff is really expected and then to plan for that. So if you find yourself in this trap of overcommitment, why don't you check just one of these techniques, one thing that we said here today, and see if you could implement that to start giving some of that time back to yourself, right? To start clawing it back, to start making time for yourself. Now, if you're thinking about time in general, I have an 8-step process for how do we gain control of our own time. And I am going to put a link to a PDF that explains this process right here below this video here. And so if you want to access that, you can certainly do that. And that will give you even more ideas about how to take back control of your time. Now, if you like this video, you want to keep getting content like this, make sure to subscribe.
Hello, just want to quickly pop in and say that only about 11.7% of you guys are actually subscribed, so it'd be a big deal if you subscribed.